A REDD Plus project in a place like Cambodia usually begins with a straightforward objective: draw a protective boundary around a highly vulnerable, carbon-rich forest and stop anyone from cutting it down. Aggressively walling off an ecosystem creates an immediate problem. For the indigenous groups and economic migrants living nearby, that forest is their livelihood. If you restrict access without providing alternatives, you actively destroy their ability to survive. Look at this protected zone map. When desperate populations are pushed outward, you get emissions displacement. Land clearing migrates to adjacent areas. Then there's the risk of reversals. The zone is destroyed from inside. This happens through climate shifts like droughts or community-sparked forest fires. When displacement or reversals occur, the math falls apart. The carbon offset project is mathematically voided. The climate benefits vanish, and the local population is left worse off than before. Successful forest conservation is a human engineering problem. It requires strict, preemptive mitigation that accounts for the needs of the people living within the landscape. To neutralize these human and ecological threats, the Joint Crediting Mechanism, or JCM, enforces a mandatory framework known as the REDD Plus safeguards. Before any conservation begins, developers must submit a comprehensive blueprint, the Safeguard Activity Implementation Plan, or SGIP. The SGIP forces project developers to assess risks and map out specific activities across 11 specific, non-negotiable criteria. On the environmental side, the document mandates strict plans to conserve natural forests, protect local biodiversity, and actively address the physical risks of reversals, like those devastating forest fires. Socially, developers must legally recognize indigenous knowledge, respect customary land rights, and ensure the full, effective participation of local stakeholders. Structurally, the project has to guarantee equal employment opportunities, generate tangible social benefits for the community, and establish transparent governance. This mandatory planning phase requires developers to address all 11 criteria and establish mitigation strategies before the first carbon credit is ever issued. Down on the ground, the SGIP dictates the actual day-to-day management of the project, starting with how decisions are made. The JCM guidelines mandate developers identify governance structures and pinpoint gaps in transparency or dispute resolution. It requires concrete measures to fix them. If villagers lack a safe way to complain, developers must build an accessible grievance mechanism so they can speak without fear. Land rights are actively protected through the same framework. In Cambodia, this translates to establishing 15-year community forest management agreements that give locals legal standing. To stop emissions displacement, the project tackles the economic root cause. Developers introduce initiatives like fair trade organic farming, boosting local incomes so communities no longer need to illegally clear land to feed their families. Robust governance and fair economic alternatives serve as the primary defense against forest reversals, anchoring the project's success to the community's stability. A perfect blueprint drawn up on day one is useless if a changing climate or shifting community dynamics render it obsolete 5 years later. To prevent the project from stagnating, the JCM requires a second document, the Safeguard Activity Progress Report, or SGPR. Before every verification period, project developers must submit the SGPR to comprehensively prove they are executing the safeguard activities in their original plan. The SGPR legally requires them to outline intended revisions to strengthen those safeguards, turning performance data into a plan for improvement. This continuous feedback loop forces measurable improvement, ensuring the REDD Plus project adapts alongside the people and the environment. Under the JCM guidelines, legitimate climate action is not a static achievement. It is a heavily monitored and endlessly repeating cycle of balancing human survival with our global ecological health.